Hey, I'm Alicia Newcomb, and this is Assembly Guide, your guide to assembling and organizing as we work to make change in our theatrical industry. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Assembly Guide. Thank you so much for joining and being back here today for more conversations about how we make the theater industry one that's more humane and sustainable. My name's Alicia Newcomb, she, her. I'm your host, and I can't wait to talk to you today. Today, we are talking about holidays in the theater industry. Holidays in theater are a time that's really exciting. Oftentimes, audiences are super excited to see shows. Lots of times, people have gotten tickets to a show as a gift that they get to experience together with friends and family. It's really fun to look out into the audience and to see people be really excited to see the show that we're performing for them. It's a time where you get to celebrate together and do fun holiday traditions around the theater. So it's a really exciting time. But they're also a time when theater workers work extra hours, often for no or very little extra pay. It's a time when understaffed theaters scramble to make shows run, often during cold and flu season when everyone's sick. It's a time when people are overworked even more with excessive scheduling. It's a time when theaters make the bulk of their income and profits at the expense of extra work by their employees who don't see any sort of profit sharing during these excess profit times. And it's all at a time when theater workers are often away from friends and family, while the general public is getting to celebrate a time of year where spending time with loved ones, friends, and family is cherished. Holidays in the theater industry could be way more humane. So that's what we're talking about today. What's the issue and what we can do to make it better? Before we go any further, let's talk about what's considered a holiday. So, in the union that represents actors and stage managers, Actors Equity Association, holidays by contract are New Year's Day, July 4th, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And when I was looking to other union contracts, because that's for the equity production contract, which basically is the contract that governs Broadway shows, it's more complicated than that, but that's the basis of it. I only saw the same or fewer holidays recognized as contractual holidays for which people who work those holidays get extra pay. That was Christmas, that was Christmas Eve, that was Thanksgiving, basically. When we talk about holidays, there's an issue here because these are not the only holidays. These are predominantly Christian holidays. We don't see Jewish holidays represented in the holidays that are paid holidays under our equity contracts. We don't see federal holidays, which are often recognized. Oftentimes, federal employees get holiday pay where they are paid and they do not have to work. A lot of times, theater workers are working federal holidays and not being paid more for even working on a federal holiday. Examples of other holidays that are not contractually considered holidays between our union as recognized by the Broadway League, our employers, the people who have to agree to these terms for them to become the contract, are Martin Luther King Jr. Day, President's Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, Labor Day, and a big one that especially should be considered a holiday and get holiday pay is Juneteenth. It was recognized as a federal holiday way too late in 2021. But a lot of times I've seen schedule changes around every single one of those holidays that result in more work for theater workers with not an increase in pay for us doing extra work during those times. So it's important that we understand why that needs to be updated and why that needs to change. Theater often gets away with being different than other industries as an excuse to not have to have the same protections and benefits, and that's a problem. Now, personally, I don't believe our lack of rest, our bodies, our wellness, our voices can be bought. That is a dangerous concept that we do not want to accept as okay. But we should absolutely be getting paid appropriately for the work that we're doing, while also ensuring that appropriate rest is built into our contracts, is built into the protections that we have. And there's hardly any extra pay for working around the holidays unless we're working on the actual holiday. And then again, remember how the only paid holidays are the ones that I specified at the beginning of this, because shows are allowed to structure their show weeks very flexibly. And they often do so that we work a lot extra during the holidays, but we don't see any increase in the pay that we are given as actors and stage managers under these contracts, because we're not working on the actual holiday day often. Extra work needs to be compensated appropriately. And I'm going to talk more about scheduling and how scheduling is often an issue during the holidays in theater. But first, to understand the issue, we have to look at the management narrative. As someone who sat at the negotiating table across from the Broadway League, helping Actors Equity Association negotiate for better, fairer contracts during the last production contract cycle, I got to hear a lot of the management narrative as to why things can't be changed from their understanding of the situation. And I say can't very flexibly because they absolutely can be changed and they should be changed. But the management narrative in general, in my understanding of it, not quoting anyone, is that they make all of their profits during this time, during the holidays, during the time in which they need to be able to schedule very flexibly to make sure that the shows that they are putting on match the times that people want to come see shows. It's a very condensed period of extra labor, in their opinion, that they view allows shows the ability to run for the rest of the year, allows shows the ability to run and stay open. I understand extra labor during the holidays. I think a lot of us do, a lot of actors and stage managers do. But again, showing people that they're cared for and appreciated in a time that they're doing extra work goes a long way. And again, people should always be compensated for the extra work that they are doing. Ultimately, regardless of what the business needs are, we are humans and have to be treated as such, not as machines. It is the business's job to find a way to run their business, a business that employs humans, in a way that respects our humanity. It's not the worker's job to set our humanity aside to accommodate a business model. And refusing things like humane caps on us never being able to do 16 shows, which is inhumane and unsustainable and breaks people's voices and bodies, is unacceptable. And it's a very basic way to show that workers are appreciated and not being treated like robots or machines. So I'm going to get into the physical and mental, emotional toll of working during the holidays and what it's like. A major issue with the holidays in theater are excessive schedules without adequate rest time, often during cold and flu season and when theaters are already understaffed. Let's talk about scheduling. Our employers, producers, theater owners, general managers, the people on the Broadway League side of our contracts as theater workers on Broadway and also in this industry, although there's also other people who are employers on different contracts. I'm speaking collectively about the employer's ability to move our day off when we're working makes it so that we often have long stretches of shows during the holidays. Our employers have the ability to move our day off as long as there is one day off within a 7-day stretch. A Monday to Sunday, there has to be one day off, but that day off can be moved. And I have another episode on excessive scheduling and how it hurts theater workers that goes way more into detail on this, so I'm going to keep it brief here. But basically, we can have a day off on Monday. We can work Tuesday through Sunday. We can work Monday through Saturday and have the day off of the second week on the Sunday. And that is totally acceptable and allowed and compensated as if we're working a normal work week. But instead of doing 8 shows in a row and then a day off, we just did 16 shows in a row with a day off on each end. So that's an ability that our employers have. And during the holiday season, our employers use that ability like wildfire. They move that day off everywhere and they throw in extra 2-show days all over the place. So we often end up doing long stretches of shows, multiple 2-show days between days off. and we're not given additional rest time to make sure that we're able to rest and recover our bodies, our voices, our health, our well-being, so that we're able to do our shows safely and sustainably. And it's an issue. In the most recent production contract negotiations, again, the negotiations for the Broadway contracts, basically, management refused to put a cap on how many shows we can do in a row. Like from 16, they refused to cap that. So right now, we're still allowed to do 16 shows in a row. We were able to get a cap down so that 13 to 16 shows can only happen 4 times in a calendar year. So that's a change from the episode that I did on scheduling previously, because that episode was done prior to negotiations, and we are now post negotiations for the Broadway contracts. Now, this is not, I think, in other contracts right now, because again, this is just one contract under our union. But never should we ever do 16 shows in a row. It's inhumane, it's unsustainable, and it breaks people's bodies and voices. And even with the cap on the 13 to 16 shows in a row, productions can still do 12 shows in a row as many times as they want in a calendar year with no requirement for extra rest. When you stack more than 8 shows consecutively before giving people a day off, it takes a huge toll on people's voices and bodies and breaks people down. And when you continually break people down without giving them adequate time to recover to their 100%, you're constantly working at less than your 100%, and your possibility of getting hurt, of getting sick, just stacks and stacks. And when that is done continuously throughout the year, people really get injured in really bad ways. This is how you break people. This is what's breaking people, and it needs to be fixed. And oftentimes during the holidays, shows still have rehearsals because a lot of times creative teams want the show to look good during the holidays because there's a lot of extra people coming to see the shows, which is great. I understand the need to clean a show. I understand the need to polish a show. And as a creative and associate choreographer myself, I strongly believe that shows absolutely have the ability and should put effort behind scheduling cleanup rehearsals and other types of rehearsals to make sure the show looks good and is still running safely well in advance of the holidays, so that you're getting the benefits of that cleanup still during the holidays without putting an extra burden and an extra toll on people's voices and bodies during what is already a very demanding schedule. Again, things are changing. So in the last contract negotiations for the Broadway contracts, we got a new restriction on rehearsals where if you're doing 10 or more shows in a row before you have a day off, shows are restricted in the amount of rehearsals that they're allowed to have. I do not believe that that language is nearly as restrictive as it should be. I think those rehearsals should only be allowed in cases of emergency, but contractually, they're still allowed for put-ins. And again, shows should be scheduling put-ins not during the holidays. It takes a little extra care, it takes a little extra intention, and it is absolutely possible. And it is a courtesy, a thought that shows should be giving to their employees to make sure that they are respecting their employees and not breaking their employees' voices and bodies and health and well-being. There's a difference between an emergency put-in and a put-in that we could have planned. And they need to be treated as different things. I also strongly believe that anytime you do 8 shows in a row, we should have a required day off following 8 shows, period. That's where I feel our contracts need to go. We did get an improvement to required rest time for show stretches of 13 plus in a row. And that is not the required rest time that I believe we should have. That still pushes people's voices, bodies, and health beyond a limit that's acceptable, beyond a limit that's humane, and it needs to change. I'm going to talk more later about what we can do to make this all better at the end of the episode, but just want to flag right here. If you are doing a show on any contract in Actors Equity Association, if you're an actor or a stage manager, you need to email your business reps anytime you do more than 8 shows between days off. Anytime. And anytime you do more than 2 show days between days off, whether or not they're consecutive. All of that is still contractually allowed, and I do not believe it should be. And the way that we fix that is by reporting to our business reps every single time that that happens, so that our union has the data that it needs to fight the fights that it has to fight at the bargaining table in future. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening, because I did a little research. I did not get on this research as quick as I would have liked to. I just had hernia repair surgery a week and what's today? Thursday. A week and 3 days ago. So I was a little preoccupied, but I did do some research. I did do some research about what's happening right now. And when I looked a few days ago at what shows schedules are right now, I was able to kind of see what's happening around Christmas Day through the beginning of the new year. And I did some data gathering. Woohoo! I love data because, again, helps us fight the fights we need to fight. So here are shows that did more than 2 show days in a stretch between days off. And I looked predominantly at what I call long-running shows, which is not a defined thing, but shows that have run like over a year, in my opinion. And I'm being generous in saying like 2+ years are predominantly at what I looked at, although there's other shows in here as well. So here are shows that did more than 2 show days in a stretch between days off. Wicked, Chicago, Lion King, MJ, Chess, Moulin Rouge, Aladdin, Hamilton, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and Stranger Things. And Stranger Things did 3 consecutive 2-show days immediately after Christmas, which again is contractually currently allowed 12 times in a calendar year, currently in the equity production contract. So again, that's a very specific contract, but that is still allowed 12 times in a year, 3 consecutive 2-show days. Go back and listen to my episode on excessive scheduling if you want to understand why 2-show days are difficult when they're put back to back, and how much greater a toll that takes on our bodies, our voices, and our well-being as performers or anyone working in the theater industry. That's way too many shows doing more than 2 show days between days off. Here are shows that did extra shows in general. Wicked, Chicago, MJ, Aladdin. Here are shows that did 9 shows in 5 days. And Juliet, Chess. And I'm sure many, many more. And I'm sure there's many more shows on every single one of these lists. This is just what I saw when I was able to check the schedules publicly. And some of these shows posted their schedule on Instagram. And Juliet, I'm looking at you to say, woohoo, here's all the times you can come see shows during the holiday season. And when I looked at comments on Instagram, there were a lot of comments there about, whoa, I hope your performers are okay. Wow, that's really going to hurt your performers and everyone working backstage. And that made me so happy because it is so true. And even the public knows it. Theater lovers know it. People working in the theater absolutely know it. And it makes me happy to see that there's public understanding of just how difficult these show schedules are on the people working them. I want to give a shout out here. Just in Time did really creative scheduling with their extra shows. But from what I saw when I looked at the schedule, they always had a day off when there were at least 2 show days. So they never put a third 2-show day between days off. Way to go. And they didn't do more than 8 in a row from what I saw from the period of time that was the day after Christmas through the beginning of the new year. So that just goes to show to all the people I've heard say on the management side that they cannot schedule the way they need to in the holidays unless they're able to break our bodies by doing more than 8 shows in a row, more than 2 show days between days off, that it is possible to do flexible scheduling and still schedule appropriate rest to make sure that people are not getting hurt, that people are not getting sick. Another physical toll that holidays have on people in theater is that we're doing a lot of work, often during cold and flu season, and while shows are already mostly understaffed. I've done an episode on swings with Maria Briggs and Joanna Carpenter. Woohoo! Go back and check that out if you want to understand why staffing is not nearly where it should be for swing coverage in most theaters. But in a time where most shows are already understaffed, we're doing extra shows during cold and flu season. Every single show that I have ever done during the holidays, there has been an illness that has wiped out almost everyone in the theater. And because we also don't have appropriate sick leave that we accrue basically one sick performance for every 4 weeks worked, I believe. Which if you're sick on a 5-show weekend and I'm out Friday, 2 shows Saturday, 2 shows Sunday, that's 5 sick performances, which is 20 weeks of work that I just lost, which is absolutely ridiculous and unrealistic if you actually take into consideration how often people get sick, especially post-COVID, when people are appropriately calling out when they should be for being sick. And when there's a lot of serious illnesses going around, and also we're still navigating a world where we don't know what post-COVID looks like. It's not even post-COVID. What our bodies are like after having COVID, it's an issue. So during cold and flu season, people get sick and it takes down everyone in the theater. And because we don't have appropriate sick leave, a lot of people come to work when they shouldn't be there. And I've heard this celebrated by management. Management feels like people call out too much already. That is not okay. We're stretched to our limits. You're pushing us beyond our limits, and you're doing it while everyone is sick, which is going to get people even more sick and injured. And then there's split tracks happening because there's not appropriate staffing in theaters, and swings are doing 100 tracks all over the theater, different tracks every day, multiple person split tracks, and everyone's just continuing to get more sick and more broken. There's also an emotional toll that doing theater during the holidays has on us, and it's being away from family and friends at a time that most of the rest of the world gets to celebrate being with family. We are privileged that we get to do what we love. That's amazing. The fact that we do what we love should not mean that our humanity is not seen or respected in our workplaces. And that's often used by management to write away the things that they're not doing that they should be doing to protect us, because aren't we lucky to get to do what we love? Yes, and my humanity is non-negotiable. Your humanity is non-negotiable. And being away from family and friends during the holidays, during the times where that's what the holidays are about. And family, I define as whatever you define, whether that's your related family, whether that's friends who are family, whether that's a combination of both. But that is a time when you are celebrating the relationships and the people in your life and what it means to be together. And we don't get that as theater workers. We are away from family. We are performing shows for other people and their families who are coming to see the show. We are lucky to do what we love. It is difficult, and it takes an emotional toll on us. There's also the emotional toll of not being valued for the extra work that we're doing during a rough time of year, for all of the reasons that I've previously described. Often, shows are making way more money during the holidays, and there's no profit share for performers that I'm aware of, despite the extra work. That's not true. Some shows, profit sharing does exist in our industry. It does not exist the way that it should in our industry. For example, I previously worked at Wicked. I chose to leave in August of this last year because of the movies, which is amazing. Wicked in the holiday season, I'm talking the winter, November, December time of year, during 2024, when the first movie came out, there were some weeks where Wicked was making over $5 million grosses at the box office. That is incredible. That's not entirely because of our show. Well, our show is making the money, but it's also that people are coming to the show from the movie, partially. And We are the people running the show every single day. So when the show is making extra profits, when we're being expected to do extra shows for usually no extra pay, like we talked about, when everyone is sick and already stretched to their limits, when we're away from our family at a time when other people get to be with family and friends, and the show is making more money because of all that extra work we're putting in, we should absolutely get some sort of thank you, some sort of compensation that reflects the work that we're putting in for the profit that the show is making. I think companies could do a better job of making employees feel valued and respected. A lot of companies outside of the theater give holiday bonuses, give a holiday gift. In shows that I've worked in, I have received holiday gifts, but oftentimes gifts can feel like something the company has to do. From people I've talked to in the industry, and not only my own personal experience, a lot of times these gifts don't feel like actual thank yous or actual appreciation for our work that we're doing. It feels like something that they have to give us. I think putting care into the appreciation that you show to your employees makes a big difference, and it's not something that I feel I see. But essentially, this is the underlying issue. Workers aren't being valued or protected, and on top of that, there's a lack of appreciation for us still working in these very difficult conditions during the holidays. I've actually seen gifts that make us feel worse. I'm not going to say what company this was, but I worked for a company that frequently used excessive scheduling, and it was creating dangerous working conditions, as excessive scheduling does. And we'd had some serious accidents in the theater. So we asked our management to sit down with us, and we said, hey, these schedules are breaking our voices and bodies. I literally had a near-death experience, and maybe I'll go into it in future, but not in this moment. And so we sat down and we talked to management. We said, this is what happened. This is just one example of what the issue is. Here are other examples. You can see, I think 40% of the entire company had to call out sick or needing rest after an excessive show schedule, which then put everyone into extreme split tracking. And we said, this has to stop. It's literally breaking us. It's literally putting us in danger. And we heard the same narrative that I discussed at the beginning of, well, this is what we have to do to make money. And this was for a company that had long recouped its cost to build the show in the first place. It is making massive profits. So no, the inhumane treatment of the workers for the show to be able to make enough money to run, not necessary. But we were told, this is what happened. We were told that they were sorry, which sorry is an action, not a word. If you say sorry but you don't change the actions that are hurting people, that you're not sorry. Or maybe you are sorry, but you're choosing to continue to hurt people, and that's not okay. But we were told they were sorry, and we were told they thought about sending us cookies, but they didn't think we would want them. To which we said, obviously we want you to change what you're doing, and the cookies would have been nice. They would have shown some sort of like, hey, we know this is tough for you. And then that show continues to send cookies or something minimal like cookies, like donuts, in times where we do more than 8 shows in a row. And not even every time. Every now and then, usually around the holidays when we're doing more than 8 shows in a row, without changing the scheduling, and also emailed to essentially say, look at us, we did it, when they did, I think, just 12 in a row, and as opposed to 15 like they had previously done. And that does not feel good. It feels almost condescending, because you're continuing to do the things that hurt people with a very minimal effort on management's side to say thank you for the work that we're doing, for the danger, the literal danger that we're putting our bodies and voices and wellness in to make the show happen, to the extent that we're being asked to. I worked with a company member who bought breakfast and coffee for everyone, like a huge breakfast spread, like twice a year. There shouldn't be a singular company member doing more than the company itself is doing for people. When the company is expecting us to work excessive schedules during the holidays. I also worked for a company that put out a basket of Hershey's Kisses and said, take one. You have to laugh sometimes because it's wild. It's tough. This can feel, I understand that maybe listening from the outside looking in, this can feel unappreciative. It can feel as if I'm complaining about gifts, which in the long run are not the change that we want to see. We want to see the actual working conditions change. But what I'm trying to help us understand here is that it's tough when we, the company members, the workers, the actors, the stage managers, the crew, when we are caring for each other better than the company is caring for us, when the company is the one putting us in the unsafe and unsustainable and inhumane working conditions like excessive scheduling, while the theater is understaffed, while everyone's sick, while we're away from family and friends during the holidays. So what would it look like for companies to show workers that they're valued? For theaters to show theater workers that we are appreciated for the work that we're doing during the holidays? What could be better? Well, in my opinion, there's a lot that could be better, but one of those things is when we're doing excessive schedules during the holidays, which in my opinion should never happen, period, because I do believe you can flexibly schedule appropriate rest and extra shows without doing more than 8 in a row, without doing more than 2 show days between days off. But while we're working towards getting there, in any stretch where we have more than 8 shows in a row or more than 2 show days between weeks, or honestly, in any stretch where we have more than, let's say, 2 months of consecutive 5-show weekends, which also takes a greater toll on our bodies, I believe our theaters should provide more PT. And here's a red flag here. We're still fighting for a base level of required PT in our contracts. There is no base level of required PT. And I've also done an episode on how our bodies are not company property and what appropriate physical therapy care looks like and why it's essential to make sure that theater workers are resourced appropriately because we use our very human bodies to do our work. But we're still fighting for even just a base level of required PT. So how can you require more if there's nothing to measure more from? But I do believe that shows should provide more PT. I believe that they could provide gifts that make workers feel appropriately appreciated and compensated for the extra work that we're doing, like stipends for health and wellness, like holiday pay and bonus pay. Especially when we're working surrounding the holidays. They could have adequate scheduled rest. They could have no rehearsals or press events during the holidays or surrounding a certain number of weeks surrounding the holidays. It would mean the world to see a management team and creative team that come in and say thank you and mean it. And I think that mean it is something that the company can decide based on your company. Yes, every show is different. Every company is different. Every leader is also different. But understand what your employees are going through and show that in the way that you say thank you when your company is being stretched beyond its limits for your company's profit. If I was a management, I would buy, if I scheduled extra 2-show days during the holidays, and I don't believe I would sign on to more than 2-show days between days off. But if you're doing a stretch where you even have extra 2-show days and still days off, and then another 2-show day, and then I would buy the company dinner between those extra 2-show days, especially when your show is making excess profits during this time for your company's work. That buys your company the ability to do what they need on their break and have food provided. We don't have to go find food on a 2-show day, on an extra 2-show day. That's exhausting during the holidays when 8th Avenue and Times Square and all these areas where we do our work are extra crowded and you have to deal with the crowds and go be outside when everyone's sick again with cold and flu season and risk your company getting even more sick. That's like an easy way to care for your people. I don't think shows should ever have more than 8 in a row before a day off. I think that shows should never have more than 2 consecutive 2-show days. I don't feel that should ever be allowed. Let's cut down right now the amount of shows we're allowed to do in a row, which is 3 2-show days consecutively. 6 and 3, they're called, can happen 12 times a year. That's wild. That shouldn't happen. Shows could schedule swing outs. And again, that's a show-to-show policy. I don't think that that's best mandated by the contract. But if I'm a good leader and I understand that people are being stretched beyond their limits, I would try to schedule swing outs with also having appropriate staffing to do so that the burden doesn't fall on swings or stage management to schedule that in a way that it is sustainable. That is something that could be planned well in advance. And if it is planned well in advance, I think it would be very easy to make happen. Management could ask for ways to help lighten the load. If I'm a good leader and I'm management, I'm not doing the work on the ground day after day to make the show happen during the holidays. Oftentimes management gets that time off. And I'm talking general managers, producers. Those people are not working the same holiday schedules we are usually. So if I'm one of those people and I want to care for my employees, I could ask, hey, I know this is a tough schedule. I know things are hard right now. How can I help lighten the load with knowing what the schedule is, what it is? What would make you feel appreciated? I think we could really strengthen communication between management and the people doing the work to help make it better for the people doing the work. So knowing a lot of this needs to change. What can we as individuals be doing to fix it? Not talking about management anymore. What can we individually be doing to help make it better? If you're a member of Actors Equity Association, you can and should report any shows beyond 8 in a row between days off. And anytime you're doing more than 2 2-show days between days off, even if they're not consecutive, to your union. That is contractually allowed. And as I said previously, we're able to fight this by gathering the data that we need to fight it in future and to show how much it's currently happening, because it's happening way too much. You're not alone. It's happening all across our industry. And when we start talking about it, we realize that we're not alone and we're in this together. And we can use the data that we have to help fight that fight. What can we do? We can use the PT that's being provided in our theaters. If the PT isn't working for you, don't not use the PT. Tell your union it should be working for you. So if it's not, let the union know why it's not working so they can fix it. I'd suggest let management know, but I know that can be scary depending on what management is like in your building. But let your union know so that next time they don't say, we have more PT than we need because it's not being used. And not all shows need that. That is absolutely incorrect. Again, if there's any uncertainty as to why every single show should have PT, listen to my episode on how our bodies are not company property. I talk about how repetitive strain happens just from doing anything physical repetitively over and over. And that is innate in our work as theater workers, both on stage and off. Advocate for the changes that you want to see. I'm just me. What changes do you want to see? What would make this better? I think we could have profit sharing for shows that have run 2+ years during a specific time period surrounding the holidays, and in any schedule where there's more than 8 consecutive shows. If we're doing extra work without appropriate rest, we should be compensated appropriately for doing so. And again, we want to be careful and not equate that with also meaning we don't need the rest. We need the appropriate rest. While we're working on getting there, we should be compensated appropriately for the extra work that we're doing. We could have appropriately labeled holidays so that we have extra pay if we work them. All those holidays I listed in the beginning of the episode, I feel should be paid. They are federal holidays. They should be paid. schedule extra shows around them all the time. They change their schedules around them all the time. And even if we're not working on the holiday itself, we're doing extra work around that time and should be compensated appropriately. And then there's even things like the idea that company management could help us out by telling people at stage doors, telling fans that cast and crew might be less likely to stage door to sign autographs during this time because it's a really stressful part of the year. It's a time when we're stretched to our limits. We're sick. It's whatever we want it to be, but think about it. What could make holidays better in the theater, and what can you do to start advocating to help make them better? And when we talk about how we've made it through 9 shows in 5 days, or we made it through all 11 shows in a row, or any other excessive schedules, please, 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 let's try to start pairing it in our speech with an acknowledgement of the inhumanity of these schedules. It's left out of this conversation a lot. It's totally okay to be proud that our bodies held up, to be proud that we did that, because it's extremely difficult and it shouldn't be being asked of us. But discussion about how inhumane these schedules are is often left out of this conversation, and it's a crucial part to continuing to chip away at our employers' continued dehumanization of us during the holiday season. We've got to acknowledge the issue more. And another reminder, it doesn't mean you're not grateful to do what you do. It means that you expect to be treated like a human and not a machine, which you're more than deserving of. That doesn't make you entitled. That's you having agency over your humanity, which is something that we all have. Ultimately, I want to just challenge us to think about this. What are the changes that you want to see that you think would help make the holidays in theater more humane? Let's talk about it. I'd love to know. The holidays are always going to be a time of extra labor in the theater world. That's just the nature of it. But that doesn't mean that this time has to be less humane. And saying so certainly doesn't mean that we are not grateful for our jobs. Knowing we're good at what we do, we should own our worth, and we certainly should be taken extra care of by our companies in a time that's physically and emotionally an extra strain on us, while also being exceptionally profitable for our employers. That extra labor and time spent away from family and friends, while the rest of the world is spending time with family and friends and cherishing that time, should come at an extra cost. No aspects of humanity, like appropriate rest and recovery for our human bodies, should be tolerated. And extra care and appreciation would really go a long way to making workspaces more humane and making people feel way more valued and appreciated for the immensely difficult work that we do. To everyone out there doing that holiday show schedule right now, performing for audiences and their loved ones while being away from our family and loved ones, I'm sending you extra comfort, strength, health, and appreciation this holiday season. Remember, your humanity is non-negotiable. Even during the holidays, especially during the holidays. Happy holidays. Thank you so much for coming back to Assembly Guide. I love that you're here. I'm so honored that you're here. Check out Assembly Guide on Instagram and follow or subscribe for upcoming episodes. Do you have a topic in mind about creating more humane theatrical spaces that you'd like me to discuss or hear me talk about? Please reach out to me directly at assemblyguidepodcast@gmail.com or on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got someone in mind you think I should connect with to celebrate and highlight the awesome work they're doing to make our theater industry more humane, let me know. Till next time, thanks for joining me on this journey towards change. I hope you have a calm, restful, healthy, safe, and happy holiday season. Bye.